Panama Tower, 210 Zulu. I'm okay to carry on taxiing to 24?
Or 210 Zulu, what you're about to be on is November. The north side that you were just taxiing on is non-movement area. So yes, runway 24 taxi via November.
Taxi via November 2. I just wanted to check on this whole grab. Clarify, thank you.
Yeah, I would always prefer you verify if you're not sure.
Thank you, and tell Brandon that's probably the reason why I did it, because of his podcast.
Okay.
All right, a new pilot there learning and doing the right thing. And as he sets out on his aviation path, he's going to be entering an industry that's changing. And not just in the way that the industry is always changing, but into a time, the current time of course, when things are changing faster than I can ever remember. I'm going to need some music for this one. Yeah, there we go. Well, we just more or less completed a generational switch out in air traffic land. Boeing, well, things are changing there. The airlines are hiring. Bombardier just sold its RJ program to Mitsubishi. Drones are everywhere. And one thing that most of us don't think about, but that has one of the biggest effects on everything about how we perceive the industry, is actually entering freakout mode about where a new generation of talent is going to come from. Don't go away. All right, welcome to Podcasting on a Plane. It's a view of aviation from both sides of the mic. I couldn't choose one, so why should you? And while you're here, you don't have to, because on this show, we get all up in aviation from as many angles as possible. And if you're new to the show, welcome. My name is Brandon Gonzalez. I'm an air traffic tower controller at a busy general aviation airport, but I have a 25-year background in aviation as a pilot, as a flight instructor, as an aircraft salesman, a ramper for a couple of major airlines, an FBO line serviceman, a plane crash survivor, an aviation podcaster, and an all-around av geek. And my goal is, and always has been and always will be, to serve the aviation community at large and to help you in your aviation endeavors, whatever they might be. Now, weekends, I put on my CFI hat and I burn as much fuel as I possibly can, helping pilots operate more efficiently in busy, controlled airspace. What's that mean? Well, it means I combine my ATC and pilot knowledge to help anybody who needs it get good on the radios, and to help them learn how to go from being afraid of busy airspace to not thinking a single thing of it. And dare I even say liking it a little more? Well, if that sounds like you, send me an email, and we'll get you headed in the right direction. And if your career needs a little direction, you've also come to the right place, because today, I've got something to tell you that might be the boost you need if you're looking to be an aviation journalist, or a writer, or a contributor, or all-around aviation communicator. Because I have a secret society, if you will. Although, it won't be so secret after today, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. Because I don't know about you, but I remember sitting there as a kid reading through aviation magazines and old trade-a-planes and things like that. It was how I learned about the industry. I mean, YouTube was at least a decade and a half from even being thought of. Social media was limited to forums on AOL. But those magazines, AOPA Pilot, Plane and Pilot, Flying, etc., well, that's how we learned the ins and outs of the industry, and to see all the new products and learn from the greats. And it really wasn't that long ago. But even before I was born, well, the great aviation writers had been penning columns, articles, and books for decades. Many had already flown west forever. But something most of us never think about is that all those magazines and those books that we read were written by people who had to come up through the ranks, fueled by nothing but their own talent and ambition. And I can only imagine what it would have been like to send a piece of your work to the likes of Leighton Collins or Gordon Baxter back in the day, just hoping to get a shot at a published article. But now, things are different. If you're a communicator at heart and you have a message to share, you can pretty much do it yourself. Whether it's just plugging a mic into your laptop and calling yourself a podcaster, or setting up a blog to write whatever's on your mind, and everything in between, technology and the internet have made it so that you can be heard. Sort of. Because while skills are the most important thing, there's a bunch of other stuff you might need to get your sustainable career going, like mentorship. You may be a great raw talent, but you may end up needing a little editing. And a network. You can't just start writing a blog and hoping a major publication just calls you out of the blue to offer you a monthly column. You see what I mean? But maybe, just maybe, we could use that same technology I just talked about to get you moving in the right direction, and to get you that mentorship you need, and to get your work seen by the people who make the decisions. Sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? And I haven't even told you the best part either. They're interested in you. That's right. I mean, if you want a career in journalism, I've got just the place. It's chock full of the decision makers at Flying, AOPA Pilot, Airfax, and the list goes on. But it really is the portal. And if you want in, well, Rob Mark from Flying and I are about to tell you how to knock. All right, Rob. So first off, welcome back to the show. And the reason I got you back is because we've got a little bit of a problem. And it's an industry-wide problem that I don't think anyone's aware of. We talk about the pilot shortage. We talk about other issues, next-gen ATC, things like that. But when it comes to how we get all the information about what's going on with that, there's a slow-burning issue in the industry. And you've sort of found yourself at the head of that. So why don't you tell us about it?
Well, I think I realized because I have turned old overnight. I don't know how that happened, but and what I notice is that when I go to conferences, most of the other aviation journalists, communicators, writers, whatever we want to call them, are pretty gray, and so just like we're talking about pilots retiring and mechanics and flight attendants and air traffic controllers, we don't really have a plan for where the next generation of people that are going to be talking about the aviation industry are coming from, whether they're writing about it for a magazine or in a blog or producing podcasts or video chats or whatever. I mean, we're just kind of all working, doing our thing, saying, well, someday we're going to have to be replaced. But nobody has really figured out how to do that. And somehow, just before Christmas, I somehow took it on as my mission to figure out the answer to that. And that's kind of how we are right at this moment talking about this.
So what is the answer?
Well, there's the magic question. And I wish I could say that I knew, but it is also like the pilot shortage. You first have to get people out there realizing that the problem even exists, and then figure out where the other folks are that can help you solve the problem. Again, that's magazine publishers. It could be podcast producers. Corporate entities within the aviation industry. And right now the writers are just writing it up. They're just writing all their stories and publishing them and saying, someday it's all going to have to end for me because I'm going to be too old and I don't know where anybody's coming from. It's kind of like pilots, though. I think that there are always going to be people out there who will answer a job ad when it comes out. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these are the kind of people that are going to be the best at telling the industry's stories. As well as I do, anybody can stick a mic into the back of their Mac and suddenly they're a podcaster. It doesn't mean they're any good at telling a story or that they're engaging or that people will like them. And of course, the industry now is so much different with social media, I think, because I look at the things that our associate editor at Flying publishes on social media, and it's amazing to me how partisan the comments become, and things that I thought were just technical issues or that kind of thing. And suddenly people are talking about, well, it's the crazy folks on the left or those goofy folks on the right. And you're thinking, how did we get to this point where the story has almost been lost? And so I think that's something else we have to cope with.
So the question that I'm thinking of as you talk here is that as a generation reaches sort of the top of their career, the golden years, whatever you want to call it, and then a new generation has to come in, is the methodology of how we communicate industry news and industry stories going to change with that as well? Because we're talking mostly about writing here. But as you said, in so many different ways, social media, podcasting, YouTube's, so many things have changed. Is the future going to be in writing, or is the new generation going to have to accept those new ways and run with those as well?
Oh, I think we're going to have to move ahead and look at the new tools that we have. And I think communicator is probably the better word to use, I think, rather than writer. I mean, you can be a journalist and focus only on podcasting. So we're going to see those kinds of folks up at AirVenture coming up. But I think too that what we have are a lot of young people who are halfway decent writers and or communicators that say, gee, I wish I knew how to get started, covering the aviation industry, whether it's the airlines or GA or aviation technology for power plant mechanics or avionics or drones or whatever. But they don't even know where to begin, because if you look at the journalism schools, they try to send people to traditional magazine and newspaper outlets. And those jobs are disappearing at a horrible rate. And so people say, oh, I guess there's nothing out there for me. I mean, but there is. So we've got this huge disconnect of people that want to bring new people in, that understand new media, and people in some of the traditional roles, say as magazine publishers or newspaper publishers, that say, we don't do that stuff. We never have and we never will. Right up to the end. So that's really, we need this core of people to help us kind of get this new media world started for the aviation industry.
Okay, well, I mean, shy of, like you said, just grabbing a microphone, shoving it in the back of your computer and just talking and hoping somebody likes it, what is something that people could do then to actually have actionable content if this is something that interests them? Like, what could I do tomorrow if I want to be a journalist?
I think, for one thing, you need to be a good writer. And I don't necessarily mean because everything's going to be in writing, but an awful lot of the podcasts that are successful, I think, are somewhat scripted. It doesn't mean that you and or I are simply reading the words we're talking about right now off a piece of paper, but you've got to be able to get it down on paper in some sort of outline form, that there's a story. What's the story? Start with the story. Okay, well, what's important about this? Why should anybody care? Now, what are the steps to fix the problem if there is one? And what's the wrap up? And then again, when that's all finished, whether you're creating a podcast or a blog post or a magazine story, does it make sense? Is it interesting? Is it something that people are going to want to read? And then, how do you approach the people that are publishing? We publish outside material at jetwine.com, and I've put up requests often, and we get a few people here and there. And women in aviation have been very good with that. I know my radio partner up at EA Radio, Amy Laboda, has been behind that effort for years at Women in Aviation, getting members to attend the events and write about it however they want, whether it's a blog post or a written story or a podcast, and then they'll put them up on their website to give them coverage, not just as a communicator, but because they had a good story to tell. But people need to be ready too, I think, for the fact that you're not going to be great at this right at the beginning. So, people that are incredibly sensitive about anybody touching a word that they have written or said is probably not going to do real well.
I agree. I don't know why anybody listens to this podcast.
I think they listen because they like your voice.
That must be it.
Because you make people feel secure. You could have been an air traffic controller. You've got that kind of voice.
People tell me that.
Yeah. I really go back to the podcast you did about the Concorde, and I just love that. I've passed that around to so many people because it was just really well done, the way you led into it, and then that particular person told the story. And although I'm sure you edited it down to make it sound good, but it was a great story, and that's what we're looking for, those stories that people know about, that they think, oh, I'm sure everybody knows about this, or this man or this woman, they're really cool. It's too bad nobody knows about them. Well, tell us about them,
All right. Well, so what I'm hearing you say then is that we've got a disconnect with the reality of where the industry is going, and a complete mismatch, of course, with how the traditional schools, as great as they may be, are training people for a career in journalism. So it seems like the crux of the situation then is that disconnect is really what's doing it, and we need to find a way to fix that. And listening to you talk, I feel like the way to fix that would be not only to give people an outlet that they could submit their work to if they think that this is interesting, but a place where they could be matched up with people who would mentor them and edit them and really help foster their ambitions in the industry, but without having to go to a, for instance, very, very expensive several year-long grad program that's going to tell them to be a writer when, they really just want to be a podcaster. So is that the kind of thing that maybe we could provide for people?
I think you're right on the mark there. And one thing I would like to just chime in with is that the journalism schools, I believe, are teaching people about new media. I know at Northwestern, the Medill School is teaching people about podcasting. I think I was more referring to where they send students, because, it's the old, well, I have my degree now, where are the jobs? And some schools are better at sending people to the right places than others. But so, again, we have this group of, I don't know, 60 or 70 writers and editors on our 21st Century Aerospace Writers group on Facebook. And I know now we're on Instagram. And so, I think that we should post something like this up there and then try and get people to spread that word around that we're here and we can help. And if you're interested, please connect with us and we'll try and get you pointed in the right direction to get started, kind of like Women in Aviation did or has been doing and is still doing for a lot of their members. In fact, they're the only ones I know that are doing that.
While you were talking, I don't know if anybody detected it there, but there's a little slip that may have happened. And you mentioned something about a group, which I guess the cat's out of the bag now, but the 21st Century, what is it now?
Sure. It's the 21st Century Aerospace Communicators Group. And we have a location on Facebook. And also we just put up an Instagram page. And it's where we're going to start talking a little bit about ourselves as communicators and what we do and how we do it, and invite people that are interested to come and join us, whether that's just to listen to what we're doing or read what we're talking about or ask for some help or line somebody up with a mentor to help get them started. We're absolutely interested in that. And we've spent the last few months kind of honing the group, to get it down to a level that we can manage. But I think it's a great spot. If people are interested, send us your questions, if nothing else. We've got contact boxes up there. So, you want to get going, we can tell you how to do that.
All right. So I guess that's it. We let it out. That's the secret society. And if I think that I have what it takes and I want to be in journalism, be it through YouTubing or through podcasting or through traditional writing, what can I do if I think that I have what it takes? If I go to that website or go to the Instagram or go to the Facebook page, what am I going to find that I can do next?
You're going to find contact information, but I'm going to give it to people here too, because I'm the one that kind of raised my hand to start this whole group. So I don't really want to dump it on anybody else to deal with people. So if they could always send me an email at rob@jetwine.com, that's JETWHINE.com, and I'll get them started in the right direction. That email should be up on the Facebook page and the Instagram page, just in case it's not. Again, it's rob@jetwine.com, and I'll be happy to send people the little one pager that we have that explains what we're doing and what we're offering and how they can be a part of this.
All right. Well, it sounds like a perfect opportunity for an aspiring journalist in the next generation. Rob, thanks for coming back on the show, man.
Hey, thank you for inviting me, Brandon. I will chat with you again.
Well, there it is. If you want to talk to me about it, email me or DM me on social media. I know how many of you there probably are hiding in the wings, and now it's your turn. If you want access to the group, all you need to do is become a $20 or more per episode patron of the show on Patreon. I'm kidding. Really, I'm kidding. There's a link in the show notes that'll take you right to the Facebook page and the Instagram, and I wish you the best on your journey. Well, it's Oshkosh week, and unfortunately, I'm not there. But I know a lot of you are, so make sure to say hi to everyone who is for me. And I had the pleasure of meeting up with community member and serial Oshkosh attendee Glenn Towler on his way there, all the way from New Zealand. And you're going to hear it in our meetup here in a second, but he said something to me over beers that really stuck with me. I asked him what he was most excited about seeing in Oshkosh this year, and without even skipping a beat, he said, the people. Well said, Glenn. So, I'm bummed that I can't be there, but I'm excited for all of you who are. As Glenn made his annual pilgrimage, he stopped by San Diego for a hot minute, and we went for a really fun flight. And then, in true aviation fashion, we went to a pub. True story. Anyway, the consummate APG fan, Glenn had an IPA, I had an underrated Irish Red, and we had this conversation. All right, so we're sitting here at the Eureka Tap House right by my home airport, which shall remain nameless, unless you figured it out. But I'm here with the one, the only Glenn Towler.
Hello.
All right.
Greetings.
And we just had a really fun flight, actually. We took a 172 from a local flight school and just kind of went up and down the San Diego shoreline and saw some expensive houses and some surfers and pretty much had a good time. What'd you think?
I did. It was really good. Thank you for that. I really enjoyed it. And it's good to get hands on the stick again of a 172, or the yoke of a 172, should say, rather than the stick.
There you go.
But it was a great day. Real nice weather. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
So it probably goes without saying, but what brings you to this half of the world?
It's my annual Oshkosh adventure, shall we say.
And you're taking the longest way possible, right? Taking the long road to Oshkosh?
Not this year. Some years I've gone via Australia, and that adds a few thousand miles to my trip. But this year I did Wellington to Auckland, Auckland to LA, and then drove down to Oceanside, where I'm staying now, Oceanside, California. So, yeah, it's good. I always try and do go somewhere before Oshkosh. So this year was Oceanside, California. So.
All right, so how many days have you spent in San Diego so far?
I got here on Monday, so 3 days so far, and it's really good.
What's been your favorite part?
I have to say, the Midway aircraft carrier. That was really cool.
Absolutely.
Two of my favorite aircraft, the A6 and the EA6. Really cool airplane. Really like this.
Cool. Yeah, for those who don't know, the Midway Museum's kind of a San Diego favorite. It's an aircraft carrier that's been permanently docked in the San Diego harbor, the USS Midway, and turned into a museum. Actually, what did you see while you were there?
All kinds of things, yeah. F-14, F-4, A-4, all kinds of aircraft, all US military and naval aircraft, yeah. It was on a long service, and it went from 1945 right through to 1993. So saw all of them, F-18, everything. Yeah. They pretty much flew every aircraft in the adventure.
And then the other day you were here, there's another really good museum of note here in San Diego, which is the San Diego Air and Space Museum. And you got to see that too, right?
I did. It was okay. It was on. I wouldn't go thinking out of my way to go there because it was all right. It's pretty good. It's good. The space shuttle simulator was good fun. It's a nail a landing, so I was pleased with myself. I think I was 20 knots over speed or something, but at least I didn't crash it. So many other people, but no, it was good. My time in gliders obviously paid off. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And then the 172, that was just like the space shuttle, right?
Yeah, just a little bit. Just with an engine instead of no engines.
There you go. So next on the pilgrimage, of course, is the whole point, and that's Oshkosh. And what are you most excited about for Oshkosh this year?
It's always the people. It's the people, always. The planes are great. There's plenty of planes. There'll be no planes I've not seen before, I'm sure, because I've been there so many times now. Everything is good. It is the people, catching up with all my once-a-year friends, people, especially people from the APG. There's so many people coming to APG this year. There'll be people I've seen every year for the last since 2012, and there'll be people I've never met before who are just turning up this year, so it'll be great, really good. Meeting up with Captain Jeff again and meeting Captain Nick from the APG. I've not met him yet, so that'll be really good.
All right, the first time, cool. Yeah, well, I'm just gutted that I can't go this year. I'm definitely jealous, but a big shout out to APG crew and all the other aviation podcasters going to be there this year, and I'm going to make it next year one way or another. don't care what I have to do, I'm going to make it. But I think you're going to have a great time. What's the theme of AirVenture this year? Do you know what it is?
I think it's fighter this year, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's fighters. But it doesn't matter because every year is cool anyway. I mean, there's so many aircraft and so many people. And I mean, last year the highlight to me was the 757 from Honeywell that had a turboprop engine on the side. And that's like a real one-off. There is no other aircraft quite like it in the world. And quite cool pictures of it too. So yeah, that would be the highlight, I say.
Cool. So for the super AvGeek listeners here, I think everyone wants to know if you're going to make a pilgrimage that long from all the way from New Zealand to Oshkosh and back, what kind of airplanes have you flown on in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, A320, 777 was this year, and then normally I fly a 737 across country. Like this year is Southwest from LA to Milwaukee. Last year was 787. Sometimes I go via Australia. If Virgin Australia get a really good deal, so that'll be a 737, then another 777 across to LA, and then cross country on whatever is going. 73, normally Southwest or something like that. Southwest would be my favourite American airline.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that though. So Southwest, that's number one for you?
Yeah.
Nice. How come?
It's the checked bags. Having them included in the price brings the price right down. I mean, maybe I could do it slightly cheaper with Spirit, but they nickel and dime you for everything. I mean, I like the big seats at the front; they're quite nice. For an extra $10, and those big armchairs, they are very nice, but it's just not quite the same. And they say nickel and dime you for everything. Whereas at least Southwest, you get a drink and a snack as well, which kind of makes it good.
Right on. Well, what are we drinking? What's that?
I actually can't remember. It's an IPA.
IPA, there you go. You wouldn't be an APG listener without an IPA, right?
No, that's true.
I won't tell anyone I'm drinking a red. Oh, I just did. Oh, no. All right, well, we had a fun day. This has been an awesome day, and I know you're going to have a great time at Oshkosh, so I really appreciate you stopping by San Diego on your way.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on and meeting up with us. It's been a great meetup. I mean, normally I meet at least someone wherever I go. I mean, last year I met so many different people in Atlanta. So I was in Atlanta last year, so I met up with Mike. I met up with a guy called Sylvester Pittman from the Airline Guys, I think it's called. He does that podcast. I met a guy from the APG who works for Delta. I shouldn't say Delta, but Acme, I should say, who does Acme Technical Services. So that was really good to do the tour of where Delta does all its deep maintenance. Engines, they strip engines right down to bare parts and everything, and that's a really cool trip. They've got a great aircraft museum. It's just somewhere in Atlanta anyway.
Cool. Well, look forward to many more to come. Cheers.
Cheers.
If you're ever in San Diego, I'd love to have an IPA with you too. And if you figured out where I work, you know I love a good VHF shout out too. And I've saved the best for last. Let's talk about the listeners who support this show. If you find value in the podcast and you're interested in becoming a show supporter, there's actually a couple of ways. The first is Patreon, and that's where you make a per episode contribution via credit card or PayPal through patreon.com. Or there's the simple as can be PayPal method where you just make a donation of whatever you want. And since the last episode, that's what Teresa Collins did. She made a generous donation via PayPal. And Teresa, if you're listening, send me an email because I'm curious. With your last name, you have any relation to my favorite aviation writer? And on Patreon, let's welcome the one and the only ATC brother from another mother, Romeo Hotel, from Opposing Bases. Sometimes people ask me if I support other shows myself, and the answer is a resounding yes, of course. I am a proud supporter of RH's podcast too, also Airline Pilot Guy, and Max Trescott's Aviation News Talk podcast as well. And if you're on Patreon looking to spread the love, I recommend you consider supporting their great podcasts too. So thank you both, and I think that's a really nice note to finish on. So to close us out, stay tuned to hear show listener, former guest, and AvGeek extraordinaire Dave Abbey reading this week's disclaimer. So until next time, if frequency change is approved, and report back on this frequency for the next episode. Good day.
I'm David Abbey from New York. The Podcasting on a Plane podcast is presented for entertainment purposes only. Brandon's comments and those of his guests, the website's content, and any of the social media, etc., are not part of his official responsibility as a controller or as an FAA employee. The views and opinions you hear on the podcast are his and those of his guests, and not necessarily that of the FAA. There is no nexus between Podcasting on a Plane and the FAA. Also, while he's a CFI, he's not acting as your CFI, nor is he your mechanic, your doctor, your shrink, or your spouse. This podcast is presented for entertainment, camaraderie, and fun, but is in no way, shape, or form professional advice or legal counsel. If you're in need of professional advice, get some from somewhere more appropriate than a podcast, no matter how good this one may be.
Line somebody up with a mentor for God's sake, you stupid phone.